The objective of a local nonprofit organization is to eliminate blight one home at a time and one life at a time with upcoming community beautification and restoration events. They could use your help. All the details are coming up on Polk Place. Hello and welcome to this edition of Polk Place. Today in studio we have Jane Waters Thomas from Doors to Change. How are you doing today, Jane?
I'm well, thanks.
It's always a pleasure to have you here. Love
Thanks.
talking to you.
Appreciate it.
So I know you've been on the show before many a times, but tell me a little bit for those who don't know about what is Doors to Change.
You know, Doors to Change began as really truly a neighborhood beautification project through our parent organization, Arts Ensemble Education Foundation, and it gets a little bit cloudy when I start mixing these organizations together because they're two very separate nonprofit groups. Today, about 2.5 years later, Doors to Change really is home safety repair, beautification, and the restoration of lives through just engaging residents, finding out what their social service needs are, what their education, their life skills needs are. We began in the community of Eloise 2.5 years ago. Literally, my plan was just to do like a paint your heart out kind of program, and some of us that have been around for a little bit know that that program was extremely impactful. And the idea just was just to beautify a home, to show that we were more than just offering arts education for children, but that we had a real purpose for engaging all of the lives, regardless of their age, within that community. Very first house, what we found out was that paint would never be enough. As we walked into the house, we found 3.5-foot holes in the floor. We found a toilet that was held literally on one 2x4.
Oh my gosh.
Conditions that you might see on TV, sending money across seas, were in this home. At that particular event, one of our benefactors was there, and he came out and just literally tears in his eyes and said, "I want you to bring this home to safety." That's sort of the history. And I remember thinking, I teach art and do education, and now we're doing home safety repair, but okay, I got this. I got this. So, you know, 2.5 years later, we've done more than 75% of the homes in the Eloise community alone. We've actually worked on, brought their homes to safety, or painted them, or beautified their yards. We remain in that community as that's where our art center is, and that's where our home base for the Doors to Change operation works from. But we really are countywide now. We are working in the Florence Villa community with the CDC and the executive director, also Mayor of Winter Haven, Nathaniel Birdsong. We're working now in Bartow. We've actually been working in the Bartow community for the past really 1.5 years as we've been onboarding this program. Onboarding this program takes a minute in a new community. There's a lot of things that have to happen. Partnerships have to be formed. That's probably the biggest thing because I'm not going to live there forever. While I love every one of our cities in our beautiful county, I'm not living in Bartow. That's not where my home's at. So the people who live here have to really be invested in the program that happens in the Bartow community, just as it does in Highland City where we work, just as it does in Florence Villa and Eloise. So really onboarding the program is probably the hardest part of any of this.
So with a house, when you walked into the first house, your reaction, I'm sure, was pretty strong because those are intense conditions. And a lot of people probably don't know that that's in our area. So how important is it for you guys to bring awareness to that, and how can people maybe get involved to help with that when they realize it?
You know, I don't think that there's anything more important than what we do at Doors to Change, sincerely. I love teaching art, and this community knows me for various programs that I work in. There is nothing more important than making a home safe for the children or the residents that live in that home. I primarily, through Doors to Change, and I need to say we primarily at Doors to Change, really work with women and children and seniors. We really target those homes first because we know they need help in how to fix electricity or repair a hole or get their water to actually work. We can do nothing without partners. The Doors to Change program is a faith-based ministry. We require the partnership of the Board of County Commission in order to be able to work in these communities. It takes a lot of people who have a lot of knowledge that we don't have in our office. We need to know what's happening with code enforcement, why homes are being condemned. We need to know how to work with our CRAs, and those are the folks that I engage first, because our county and our state, our cities do a beautiful job of identifying need. If I never went to anywhere other than to our Polk County Board of County Commission building, I would be able to identify every single need within our county. So that partnership, I can't replace that partnership. Partnerships are definitely, not only from our government. When we started in the Eloise region, we started with a program called Day of Service. And we had 192 volunteers show up on a Saturday morning, and we worked on 14 different homes that day. That was really the first big Doors to Change program. And through that program, what we found is that if you dedicate your staff, you dedicate your time for a minimum of 6 weeks to each resident that you work within their home, what you have the ability to do is not just fix their house. That's a challenge sometimes, because the residents that most greatly need our help aren't homeowners, they're renters. And probably the greatest challenge that we are faced with and have been able to overcome successfully is working through the legalities of working on rental properties where we know that landlord is never going to put another dime into that property. That isn't how they make money in areas like that, very unfortunately. Those folks are kind of left on their own, and they will be lifetime renters. They will never own that home. That will be maybe where they live out the succession of their entire life. And so, I look at, when you say success, I look at success from this place. How impactful were we in the life of that person that lived within that home? Some of our testimonials that we have on our website, some of the stuff that I read, I go, wow, I didn't even know we were doing that for them. Meaning, a little boy no longer gets shocked when he touches his stove at his house. You're not talking about a buzz, you're talking about knocks him back 3 feet. Completely not grounded. Yeah. So those are some of the things, and I think that's very successful. Massive, 40+% crime rate drop in Eloise. Now I have to say, Sheriff Judd and his staff are the reason that thing's going down. What we make possible are the wraparound services. So by their efforts, and I don't have a better partner than the Sheriff's Department, and I know that Sheriff Judd doesn't even know half of the stuff that his men and women do just because they just do it, it's their job. We have, obviously they're warriors, they show up in defense of, they also show up in love. And that is the entire purpose of Doors to Change, is show up in love and change some lives. So crime rates down more than 40% across the board. That's various statistics that are in place that identify things like loss of life, in-home invasion, those kind of things. So that it's all identified as almost like it's a line item in a budget. It's kind of scary when you read that stuff. But when you get to the end of a 2-year period and you go, we're down more than 40, it's actually 43% across the board. I don't care if it's the Sheriff's Department that makes that happen. I don't care if it's Doors to Change that makes that happen. That means that lives are safer in that region. So I look at that success rate, I look at the engagement of lives and where our residents are, and I go, this is successful. Did we mean to be a nonprofit organization? No. No. We began as an arts education program for kids that had real needs for after-school programming. What we found was that art would never be enough, that in order to truly change a life, you had to step inside their home. And so we became this full-scale program, and we've kind of had to build it in the last 3 years based on what the needs were as they were coming at us. I feel like we're just now at a place as an organization where we have a real model.
Wow. And that's amazing that you guys are getting that many volunteers and getting that kind of progress. And it's interesting that you mentioned your testimonials, because I was checking out your website, and I encourage the viewers to check it out if they're on the internet just browsing around. Because to watch the testimonials, you can see there's a real, there was a video on there that had a real emotional response from one of the people that you did renovate a house for. And it was just, it's touching to see that you guys are making that big of a difference here in Polk County in our community. You guys have a particular event coming up called House Paint Bartow, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So tell me what that one is particularly.
Well, the House Paint program is how we started, and this is actually House Paint Bartow number 2. We've been working on five homes for the last couple of months in this community. We have a staff of 4. Actually, we have a staff of 3.5, and so again, another partnership, kind of tying back to those partnerships that make things real. You know, we're a nonprofit, we're faith-based, which means that we require volunteers and partnerships in order to be able to do the work that we do. You know, in the beginning of our talk, I mentioned that we're in 4 communities. Not one of those communities is without 2 or more partners that make it possible. You just have to have the manpower.
Yeah, of course.
Manpower is very expensive.
And what do you all still need as far as, do you need materials, volunteers? What do you need to make this happen?
Always. We always need volunteers. There's just not a greater need. You know, I say this often to my staff, when we love on our volunteers, we're loving on our best fundraisers. We just are. So we definitely need volunteers. There's never a time that we don't need greater funding. Because we're a staff of 3.5, our scope and our outreach is very significant. The numbers of people that we serve in a month would rival anything to an organization twice our size right now. That's because of volunteers. But what that does do is it makes it very difficult to fundraise. So we're always seeking companies or individuals who want to give to the effort of U.S. missions, because that's what Doors to Change is. At the end of the day, we're the U.S. missions that you see in other countries, you know, working in jungles. Misunderstand this for a second. All of those things are very needed. We are a global community today, and I'm thankful for that. So when somebody tells me they're going to Guatemala, Honduras, Costa Rica to work, I go, that is beautiful. We concentrate our work right here because I can take you in 10 minutes, 15 minutes max, depending on where you live in our county, and take you into areas that are absolutely as deserving. And we don't have to send our money across seas to make that happen, or out of country to make that happen. Not to say that you shouldn't if that's your heart, but funding is our greatest issue always. It is a very expensive endeavor. We spend about $3,000 per house. We have, you know, we work on about 40 houses a year. That math is real. Now that's safety, that's not just beautification. If we add our beautification numbers to that, we're somewhere around 57 to 60. More volunteers would make those numbers higher. More funding would make those numbers higher. You know, greater outreach comes by way of human resources and finances.
Yes, absolutely. You guys are doing an amazing thing here, incredible work, and I wish you all the best with your event here. Thank you so much for being here to take the time to talk about it.
Thank you very much.
Doors to Change and Keep Polk County Beautiful invite you to House Paint Bartow number 2 and their upcoming community beautification and restoration events. House Paint number 2 is scheduled to staff the opportunity to meet residents and identify greater needs, such as home safety repairs. Volunteers are needed for the event. For more information about the program or to step up and grab a brush, give them a call at 863-845-2984 or check them out on the web at www.arts2doors.com.